Hello, guys.
Hey, Brad, how are you?
Brad,
Thanks for
hi.
joining us.
No problem.
You're going to be up first after all the administrative, like
No
housekeeping.
problem. I just left Community Board 3 because we're having a meeting similar to their Health and Human Services meets tonight, but it's more about Rivington.
Got it. Okay. All right. Let me get things started then, everyone. Welcome to the March 4th meeting of the CB6 Strategic Community Planning Committee. My name is Kavitha Matthew, and I'm the chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 7:04 p.m. And tonight we are joined by Assistant District Manager Cody Osterman. Members of the public, I think we have a good bit tonight. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there's time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Tonight, Sandy has volunteered to take minutes tonight. I know that was a changeover, Cody, from Rich originally. Thank you, Sandy. You should have all received several emails from the board office with a link to a doodle sign-up sheet for minutes takers at your committee meetings in 2021. For your convenience, Cody's going to put the link in the chat right now. If you want to fill that out. Okay. And at the direction of the board chair, each committee meeting must have a designated minutes taker and a designated backup, just in case. To eliminate the guesswork, make sure that you volunteer for as many slots on the doodle sign-up sheet as you can. If more than 2 people sign up for a particular month, the office will make sure to distribute the duties equitably and will let you know in advance which months you're due to take minutes. If you have not already filled out the doodle, please do so right away. Okay, and I think, yep, Cody just put that in the chat. And now we'll take attendance by roll call. Cody will conduct the roll call.
Okay, committee members, I will call your name. Please unmute yourself and say present. Someone's audio is a little feedback, so I'm going to mute everyone. Asia Body, Jim Collins. Jim, you are muted. We see that you are here, but you're going to need to unmute yourself. Kavitha Matthew.
Here.
Sandy McKee.
Sorry, I was filling out the doodle.
Sandy.
Here.
Wells Magali.
Here.
Rich Mintz.
Here.
Lou let us know that he had an excuse, medical absence tonight. Sandra Sherrod. Letty Simon.
Here.
Corinne Vanderdonk.
Present.
Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
That's 8 of 11 members present, and that is a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Cody. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and appears on the screen before you. If there's no objection, we will adopt the agenda as stated. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. And seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the February 4th meeting were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there's no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the February 4th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. I'm gonna now set a few ground rules as usual. So in order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. First off, no one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. If you click the participants icon, the participants panel should appear and you should find the raise hand function there. If you still have technical difficulty, you may click the chat icon and relay your difficulty. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you're having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I'll identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And we are required by executive order to create a verbatim transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. Now we can move on to our agenda for the evening. And we have a couple of guests joining us, and we do have a good number of people, members of people from the public who've joined the meeting tonight. So welcome everyone. Welcome Brad and George. And we're going to get started by getting an update from Brad Korn about the Mount Sinai, Beth Israel, number 1 and 10 Perlman Place development. I know that it's been, I mean, we're just starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel of this, I hope, of this pandemic. So I understand that things have been delayed. So Brad, I'm going to hand it off to you so you could let us know what's going on.
Okay, well, as I've discussed previously, obviously the pandemic changed the world we live in, and it also changed our planning operation to a great extent. So in reality, the construction over at 13th Street for the new Mount Sinai Beth Israel is paused while we now look at all options on the table for the future of what Mount Sinai Beth Israel is, obviously with the exception of closing the hospital. So to that end, you know, there's really been no plan to what we might do with disposition of property when it's done, because we no longer know what property may or may not be done with. The only thing that we have moved forward with, and that does, you know, deal with Perlman Place a little bit, is we are now going through construction on the site of 45 Rivington for a comprehensive behavioral health center. But that's still, you know, almost 2 full years away from being completed, because we did pause that for a while too, because we didn't think it was fair to put our construction workers in harm's way during the pandemic to have them work. So, you know, and we've really, and we checked, I double checked today with our real estate folks, we have done nothing as far as marketing or disposition of property, even including Perlman, which now houses the behavioral health center. So I again, I indulge your patience insofar as I keep telling you a lot of nothing, but nothing is the story right now, that there's been really no movement. Because right now, look, we're still dealing with the second wave, and now we're dealing with the issues of vaccinations too. So it's really still all consuming for the time being.
Okay, Brad, thank you so much for that. I know you had told me before that it seemed like things were really at a pause, and we may rethink our, you know, community outreach based on that as well a little bit. But
and obviously we are committed to working with you and discussing what's going forward with the plans. You know, besides working with you directly, you guys wear 2 hats. You wear 2 hats insofar as that the property that exists, the existing hospitals, and what the future of a hospital that serves a large number of people from Community Board 6 is. So we understand that. But, you know, we're committed to working with your committee, working with Community Board 6. You know, we do with the, as with the working group and everything. So, you know, obviously, when we know something, we'll clearly, you know, when we know we're moving towards some ideas, we'll be talking with you and speaking with you and keeping you abreast of it.
okay, we really do appreciate that. And is there any, so there's no plans on the table for an upcoming working group meeting or anything like that? With
I think right now everybody's sort of concentrating on COVID and the vaccination. I would say probably, you know, I would say probably as we get to late spring, you know, where we have hopefully a lot of people vaccinated and everything, it should be, there should be hopefully an ability to get everybody together. I think right now you got a lot of people, including the elected officials, who are concentrating on that too.
yes, absolutely, of course. I guess from our point of view, we are, you know, we've shared with you what we've done so far in terms of trying to get our thoughts together and have like a real roadmap for how to, you know, how to like get some community input and engagement around the sale. I thank you for your patience as well, understanding that, you know, we're just trying to get out there in front of this and see if we can get some feedback from the community and, you know,
And I know that like the borough president's office had, also set up a group specifically for the disposition of property for Beth Israel. It's now going on so long because of the pandemic. We're going to probably most likely have a new borough president before anything's planned or anything as well, as far as that goes. So I think it's important to whoever takes Gail's place that we continue on with that as well. And as I said, we want to be open and transparent as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please do keep us posted if you do hear anything at all. And we're going to probably continue with our outreach and community, just because we're learning as we go as well. And I
Yeah.
think it's going to take a while for us to get a decent amount of feedback. So I'm going to open it up now to see if there's any questions from any of the committee members for Brad. Let's see. No, I don't think I see any. Okay. Okay, Brad, I think you're off the hook.
Yeah. Well,
But you're welcome to stay. We are going to
anytime-
talk. We're going to talk a few minutes about, just continuing our outreach efforts, which, maybe we'll push back a little given the circumstances as well.
But look, anytime you have a question, you know how to reach me. Anytime you need me to come talk to you guys, I'm happy to do it.
I do appreciate it. And for the record, Brad is extremely responsive. I send an email and 3 seconds later, I get a response. So that's always nice. I thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, you guys take care. Good to see you all.
You too.
Well, I'll see you on Monday.
All right. So, moving from that and understanding where we were with all of that, I just wanted to set our sights on knowing that this is really like a big project, but it's paused. But again, if it starts up, I want to kind of have some of our ducks in a row, and say, we've already reached out to the community. We've already done some of this work and we're ready to, to speak to whatever developers or whoever is thinking about, purchasing that site and doing something with that site or with the city. So I wanted to just reiterate that what we've done up to date to keep everybody informed is, we went through months ago hiring a consultant and kind of creating a roadmap for outreach and planning around this. And then we created a website, which is still there, theperlmanplace.org, which has gotten a lot of, I think, a good number of clicks, and people have been looking at that. We've also furthered our outreach on that. We did multiple info sessions in the past few meetings around key issues, and the last one around kind of means of community engagement. I don't know past that, we've sent out letters, and now we have these flyers that I sent to everyone. And there's been social media outreach. Thank you, Corinne, for setting up the account. We do set up a Twitter account, I think, right? Yes. Okay, so thank you for that. We can go further on that if anyone is wanting to take something on. The survey that has like a QR code link to it now. Would love for people to start filling that out, including committee members. We haven't gotten much feedback on that. I don't know if we have to rethink the way that's laid out in the questions in there, but thank you, Cody. I was just going to say that. Oh, did you put it? Is that the Twitter thing or is that the survey?
That's one of the tweets. I'm getting the survey link next.
Thank you, Cody. Yeah, so any committee members or members of the public, I'd really appreciate it if people could start, just taking that survey. If you have feedback on the survey questions themselves, you can reach out to us and let us know what you think or what you think would be more helpful or useful. And I'll again open that up to committee members to discuss. If you guys have any thoughts on that, we haven't had a lot of response. So I do feel like we may want to rethink how we're kind of putting it out there. No, any committee members on that? No, okay. We'll take a look at it, fill it out, let me know. I did think about one thing, I don't know if it's helpful or not. I think we can maybe have a little bit more detail in the survey, but also I wonder if it makes sense to make some of it anonymous. We do ask, it's kind of like a survey plus, contact info gathering. And I don't know if that's the best way to do it or not, or if people are going to be more willing to share thoughts if they're not putting their name and email and everything on the survey itself. So just a thought moving forward. And then lastly, this can probably wait now that we have the update from Brad that things are really delayed and on pause, but really thought that we could kind of get our feet wet by doing some outdoor events, like, just a tabling, or, I would stand outside with a sandwich board with the QR codes on me and have people scan me and take the survey right then and, just walk around the streets. But really, I think trying to get out there in front of people and say, this is going to happen in the near future. We really want your feedback. These are our thoughts, or, these are the things that we've determined are kind of missing, or, like kind of, we don't have enough of it in our community, including affordable housing and supportive housing and, senior care and some of the healthcare issues. So really that's the next step. We thought we may do those in the spring, but again, given this, let us rethink it. If I had sent that out to everyone, I will also take any feedback on that. If you guys think there's a good timing for that, should it be before? Okay, Sandy.
I think we should move ahead. Just
Okay.
whatever we, sorry, whatever we have in place will just be better to give Mount Sinai, Beth Israel, some sense of what we're looking for.
Right.
And
I think
they can plan.
I agree with that. So given that, I think when the weather is, getting a little better, I thought maybe late April or sometime in May, we could pick a weekend or two, a few hours. I can send out a doodle poll and sign up, if people are willing to volunteer. We could work in shifts and just, man a table with the flyers in hand, hand out information. I think, Cody, you said you had some tote bags I could give out to entice people to our table. Had thought about maybe if we're setting up in a particular spot, reaching out to maybe do it at Stuyvesant Park if we're allowed. So really reaching out to the folks there and seeing if that's a possibility, or somewhere in the vicinity, obviously, of the potential development. Okay, so we will follow up with that and get some volunteers and feedback and set that up. So I think if there's no other questions on MSBI, are we good to move on to, and members of the public, I know we've before I lose sight of this, we've said, come to these meetings to see how you can get involved. So the ways you can get involved right now really are to fill out the survey. You could also, if you have something more detailed, you could send it to us in terms of thoughts about what you see for that site or other sites in our community. We really do want to start hearing from people. And then we will certainly publish, if we do these outdoor kind of meet and greets, we'll publish those on the Perlman Place site and on hopefully on the CB6 site and in emails and such, so that all of you guys know about it and can get involved in those as well. Okay, and I don't see any questions from the committee, so I think we're going to move on to go quickly through this tonight to our next agenda item, which is we started talking about this in the last land use meeting. I know a few of you were at that, but there is a legislative proposal from City Council. It came from Speaker Corey Johnson's office, and it was called Planning Together, a bill that proposes a 10-year comprehensive planning framework. And we did go into kind of deep discussion around it at the last land use meeting. And since then, early last week, there was a hearing that was held, and a long hearing that I listened to the whole thing pretty much. I think I stepped away a couple of times. I did work, but it was on in the background. George, I saw your testimony and everything. So I found that it was pretty intense feedback. I don't know if anyone else got a chance to watch that. I also sent out info to all of you guys with Annie Levers from Speaker Johnson's office had given presentations at various community boards. We had invited her to come tonight and speak to us. She was not available. She could come to a future meeting, but really we have recordings of those other meetings that I encourage you to watch if you haven't already. But really, I'd like to get an idea of what happens now, because I know that I had some opinions about it, and I think others do as well. George, I don't know if you can maybe give us any kind of feedback from after the.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Before I get started, I think what you're doing on this Perlman place, like proactively planning for that, is so awesome. I didn't really know much about it, but that's exactly what community boards should be doing, in my opinion, is actually asking what you're not being reactive, but being proactive, right? And so anyways, I was really glad to hear about it. But about planning together. So the hearing, yes, I was there the entire time. I found it absolutely riveting, actually. I thought it was really fascinating. I thought the council and city planning, the back and forth that went on there was really something. And I think there was some very open questions as to what the proposal is for, which was kind of surprising. You had the speaker essentially calling the chair of city planning, if I may say this, a liar, misrepresenting what the proposal said. And, you know, it was one of the oddest things I think I've ever seen, because she actually read part of the legislation, and Corey just like, Speaker Johnson was just like, you're lying. I thought it was kind of astounding. It seems like there's a real misunderstanding of what this legislation will do when it comes to local decision making. Because what Chair Lago was saying was that, and frankly, her opinion is my opinion, because I think it's very much rooted in the text of what they proposed, is that it's very top down. You have the mayor's office coming in, doing community engagement in each of the community districts. You have them developing the land use scenarios in each of the community districts. The community board essentially is just another stakeholder, and they get to pick one of the scenarios that get developed. You have, it doesn't really give any more responsibility or resources to local people. I mean, she called it top down, and I gotta say that it is, and that kind of set off Speaker Johnson and Council member Lander and Council member Reynoso, who are very supportive of this, and they were really pushing back at that. But you know, there seems to be this conflict with a misunderstanding of what this actually does. And, you know, I can only go with what the words say, right? And the words say, you know, it's pretty top down. There may be, in terms of, like, you asked the question, like, what happens now? And, you know, there's all this testimony, there's all this feedback. I think, you know, there can be changes, right? There can be changes to this legislation to make it better. You know, I encourage that community boards not only get Annie Levers to come and speak, but to actually say, well, you know, there are portions of this to say, you know, well, this is a problem. We need to change this portion. If, you know, I also encourage, if you were to get her to come and speak or watch one of the speeches online, is you should be well versed in what the legislation actually says, because I think there's some there's some, the legislation doesn't always say exactly what she's saying, and I'm not exactly sure why that's the case. Maybe they're already contemplating changes, right? You know, they put this out late last year, and maybe they're realizing, oh, this doesn't work, and so we're going to actually make some changes. But you know what? You don't know, right? And so you just got to keep pushing, right? If there are parts of this bill you don't like, you guys got to keep pushing and say, we don't like this part. We've got to change this part. And you know, I'm really just focusing on the land use aspect of this. I think we have to give Council Member Rosenthal. She gave enormous amount of questions, good questions on the whole capital budgeting part of this, which I thought was, her questioning was really spot on, it seemed to me, even though I don't really know much about capital budgeting. It's not my thing. But you know, I know the way we do it now is not very good. And this is a proposal to put all the pieces together. So yeah, I can keep talking about this. Or you want me to focus it on one thing or another?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, George. And just to kind of go backwards a little bit, because I'm not sure if all of you guys had a chance to read through the huge pile of information I sent you all, but really it is a way that's proposed to revamp how things are done from all the disparate agencies and all the things that are going on kind of simultaneously and disconnected. Which sounds great in terms of, in theory, it sounds amazing. And it's everything that I think about with even our community board, like in a microcosm, it's like we should really all be working together towards a common goal, right? Determine it together and work towards it together. So the whole beginning of the planning together, like booklet that I read from cover to cover, really the first like 10 pages or so are amazing. And they talk about why we're doing this. The history of how the city planning was done in New York, how other cities have taken on this kind of comprehensive kind of framework type of overview, and how we should do that too. And how, since it hasn't been done, many communities have been left in the dust, right? Haven't had as much of a say as others. Like all of this sounds great. All of this sounds like this is exactly what we should be doing. So that's kind of the preamble. But then when you get to the actual meat of it, I immediately was like, wait a minute, because as Justice George said, there's serious top-down issues in every way. And instead of to me, instead of cleaning up, it's actually, I think it's kind of adding levels of bureaucracy to it. There's these new steering committees and groups, and the community board plays a part, but then there's local steering committees and like an overall steering committees. And there's a lot of mayoral appointees. And at the end of the day, the Office of Long-Term Planning and Sustainability, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. They have the kind of the final say on all this stuff. Everybody votes on one of three plans that are done by them. The community boards vote, the city council members, the borough presidents vote, and then I think if someone, I can't remember if I'm getting this right, George, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they don't select a plan, then this office basically selects one for you. That doesn't sound very engaged with the community. And to me, the fact, and I think there was a lot of pushback, I know there's some hands going up, so I'm going to get to you guys in a second, but some of the pushback that I thought was very valid was that this wasn't something that was really communicated clearly with the city and with the community board. So there was a lot of community boards there saying like, we didn't, this seems like it was just kind of barreled through or trying to get barreled through without any engagement in terms of, hey, why don't you talk to us in terms of making this plan, right? Putting this together instead of just saying, oh, we're missing this. So now top down, we're going to put this together for you. Here you go. So that's my take on it in a nutshell. I'm going to take questions from, I don't know who was first, Claude. Why don't you go ahead?
Just an easy question to George. I haven't taken a look at it, so I don't know what's in it. But does this require city charter changes?
Oh, well, okay. So that's a good question. It doesn't require a referendum, but it's something that would be done just with this legislation. Now, if I may follow up with that, just because there has been talk, the reason it's set up this way, in this kind of top-down sort of way, is because a real change would require a charter revision commission and a referendum. And they couldn't do that in the time frame. We just had one and they couldn't do it. And so they're like, we want to do this, but we don't really have a way of doing it. So we'll do it this way, which we can actually implement now. And so, that I think is a problem. In my opinion, that's a problem. I mean, if, editorializing here is that, I worry about putting so much power into regarding land use in the hands of the mayor's office, just because I know, especially with the community engagement, it's not like these people aren't talented when they come in. They're very talented, but they don't work for the community, right? And if they end up with a result that the mayor's office doesn't like, well, you can forget about it. It's not going to happen, and that's an inherent conflict of interest. And if you essentially put a conflict of interest into law, well, I mean, you're going to poison comprehensive planning for a generation, or at least you have the potential to.
Okay, yes. Wells, go ahead.
Kavitha, we talked about this briefly earlier in the week when we met. I'm wondering, timing wise, this is a question for the committee, but also George, I'd like your opinion as well. Is this the right timing for us to craft a resolution, calling out the aspects of this legislation that we support, but more importantly, areas where we would expect them to, where we would look to make changes or improvements to this? And given the complexity of the legislation, or it's very, there's a lot of detail there that we may or may, some of us may know some pieces of it, but we're certainly not experts on it. Is that something that we might need some help with, Kavitha? To make sure that the resolution is, as accurate to the text of this legislation as we, that it's really as effective as it can be. So that's kind of first. And then the second thing is, assuming we would go through a process like that, or, to do a reso and present it to the full board and it passes, would we seek to have a letter, that we might kind of co-author with other community boards, where we are trying to, to do something collaboratively with other boards to amplify those suggestions for changes? And what is the best timing for that? It seems like it's pretty urgent, given that they're trying to push this through, before the end of this session.
Yeah, Wells, I honestly don't know if they are going to try to push this through. I'm getting very different perspectives on that. That Speaker Johnson's got his sights on other things now. I don't know if this legislation is just going to sit, or if it's going to really get, I think just like we're doing with community planning, I'm all for just moving forward. That way we've at least, while it's fresh in our minds, or, as you guys look at it, I think I'm definitely on board with writing a reso. I mentioned it to Adam, who I think is on the call, for, if he wanted to do joint with land use, or we could do it and just, kind of review it together. That it would be good to get our points together and at least have them on the record. And I think that was what, at the last land use meeting, Wilfredo Lopez was there from Ben Kalos's office, and I think he was also saying, let's get your feedback, let's gather feedback, that we really want to have all of this from all of the community boards, particularly those that really have some say in it. And my feeling at the end of the day is, I do think there's tons of holes in this, but I don't think we should throw it away. We shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because I think this idea of having a comprehensive framework for planning is probably something we really need to do. But if we can kind of call out all of our issues with it that we compile, well, so I think we need to have a motion for a reso, or is that how it works? We never write resos in this committee, Harley. So
yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I'm making that motion, I guess, with this as a follow-up to my question.
Yeah, hey, Kavitha, this is Adam. Did you unmute me, or did Cody unmute me?
Cody did.
Cody did. Okay, I can remute myself and be called on later if you'd like.
Oh no, go ahead, Adam. Were you going to say something now?
Oh yeah, I mean to the point in terms of a reso, I'm in agreement. I guess the thing is that you guys should potentially consider is I think there's sort of two tracks, right? Because full board is on the 10th. So I mean, having a very sort of it's definitely doable. But I guess potentially, if you want to, you could have something that speaks specifically to this resolution and potentially what we like and what we don't like. And then in addition, in committee meetings, after this, we could sort of expand upon, a broader vision that we'd like to see, for sort of if this doesn't move, when this issue is retaken up, and potentially if this issue is retaken up again by this council or, the new termers, in January of next year.
Yeah, I think if we didn't get it in time for full board on the 10th, would it make sense to even do it for the following? I mean, if we wanted to go ahead with it with our committee, I guess we could try to do that.
Sure.
If Adam, if you're fine with us kind of
Yeah.
putting the framework together. It's going to be a bit of work though, because this is a large, long piece of legislation, so I don't want to rush it too much.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we want, I mean, so land use is on the 22nd. So if we want to sort of do a joint reso writing or something on, in the 22nd meeting, we can do that as well. So that's
Right.
up to you guys.
Okay. Okay. So
I guess just to follow up, what I would, I don't know. I mean, and George, tell me if you think this is not the right timing, but I'd rather take a little longer and have it be, as comprehensive as possible, have it be joint with land use and give us the time to really have this be, an in-depth resolution. And so we could present it to full board in April rather than, try to rush something in 1 week, which I think is going to be difficult, if not impossible.
I do agree with that. And I also think that gives us time to maybe gather some thoughts. And even, we had talked, Adam and I talked about having a panel on this or bringing some other voices to the table. That way we get a little more feedback. And I agree with you, Georgia. I thought it was riveting. I thought maybe we're the only ones, but I was just like, wow, man, this was intense, that hearing. There was a lot of very heated opinions on both.
And it's usually like watching paint dry, right?
I wasn't planning to sit there for the whole time. But, I know there's a couple more questions. So Jim?
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to second what George said about the process of this and assigning everything through the mayor. At the very least, I think it should go through the mayor, the public advocate at the very least. But I also think generally there should be a referendum. Second, I was speaking with or texting with John West, who was formerly on this committee, and the city club has been discussing a citywide planning, a citywide plan for quite some time, and I'm just wondering if perhaps we want to bring their opinions into this matter. And thirdly, I'm wondering if perhaps we should raise this at full board. I'm sorry, at borough board, so that we can all speak with one voice for the entire borough. Perhaps draft a resolution generally, that doesn't speak specifically to our district concerns, but speaks more generally to the overall concept. I mean, in terms of this committee, what's the consensus? Are we generally supportive of this, or are we generally opposed to it because of not? I mean, I'm a Democrat, small d. All right, and those of you who know me know otherwise for the large D. But I'm just opposed to the notion of doing this without having it go through a voter process, without a referendum. I don't think it's appropriate to change the city charter to this extent without a referendum.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how does the committee feel generally toward that notion of just doing it?
Are you saying of the legislation going through? Yeah,
just speaking more broadly than our specific concerns. I think we could probably get at full board that we can then raise with borough board almost immediately, or certainly by April, a general opposition to the entire concept if we oppose it. without, without having a referendum. That shouldn't be a big issue. But then addressing specific concerns district by district, community district by district, in a more lengthy resolution that the entire borough board could pass.
Interesting. I mean, I don't know how that works. I do think I agree with you, Jim, but I don't know how many people in the committee have actually read through all of this to have a strong opinion either way. So I think we should take a little time and review it. And, as well said, I think the timing might be better off if we kind of go through a couple of drafts of this with the land use committee, come to full board with it, and then take it from there. And again, like knowing what I know of the bill, I don't think there was anything specifically about CB6 that was, our district that was really glaring. It was really the whole thing. It was really about like the process. So yes, I think that makes sense. I'm going to let a couple more people talk and they can share, their thoughts on it. Jim, your hand's still up, but I'm assuming.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So Rich.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, there's no realistic possibility that this will pass the council before our next full board meeting in April, is there?
I have no inside information, but I don't think so.
That's my feeling too. I was just wondering if
it seems so unlikely.
Okay, that was it for me.
Okay, thanks, Rich. I tend to think it's unlikely too, but who knows?
I would just mention though that if this has the support of the speaker and he's pushing it, then the legislative agenda may go with that as well. He may force it. That's all.
Well, did you have something else? Or else I think.
Just very briefly in response to Jim, I think like the referendum issue is one piece of it that we might object to or we might suggest as a change. But I generally agree with what you're saying, is that what we would put in our resolution would not be, CB6 specific. It would be about the process of engagement, about the lack of resources, about the top-down nature. It would be voicing concerns, I think, that would be broader and probably shared by other communities. So I think that's right. How that works with borough board, I'm too much of a newbie to know. So, but in terms of the content of the reso, I think it would be something that would be opposed to it as it is, right? And with suggesting changes to it to improve it.
I mean, would that be supportive of the bill in its intent, but with a lot of, issues kind of laid out?
Maybe not. It's like we're not opposed to comprehensive planning. Like we're in support of that. We're just opposed to this particular process as it's been laid out.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, Kyle. I see Kyle's hands up.
Hey everybody. So just to echo the sentiments, I think it makes a lot of sense to take your time on something as comprehensive as this. As has been mentioned, I think we have some time that we can work with. And yes, the whole sort of philosophy that I've been working with the executive committee on is collaboration, not just within ourselves and our committees, but also with the rest of the community boards in Manhattan. And so as you put this resolution together, this is something that I can then elevate to the borough board, present on. We can get this on the agenda and have a borough vote on it if that's something that the other board chairs are interested in. But working with them so far, I know that this is something that they would be interested in. So as we write it, I think we should take that perspective on it.
A broad perspective. Right.
Correct. Yeah. Not districts specific. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Kyle. That's great. That would be wonderful. So do we need to take any kind of vote on, oh, Sandy, go ahead. Your hand's up as well, I think, or?
Yes, and I just want to say, like, if you listen to some of the other boards, the concern is it's actually a 10-year cycle, I believe. So there's this feeling that it's way too fast, but way too slow. So whatever we can do to try and help clarify and make it better and really push for it, I think is great. It just seems such a shame that we have to wait for another election cycle. So I would advocate for, digging in, doing this reso and getting it ready as putting our thoughts together as quickly as we can, because 10 years is a long time.
Oh, who's saying that we can't do this on the current, in the 2021 November ballot? I mean, those ballots are nowhere near ready to be printed. There's primaries. I don't understand why if a referendum were to be written, it couldn't be included in the 2021 ballots, the November 2021 ballots. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know who you heard or who said that, but it's certainly not the case with the Board of Elections, I would think.
Yeah, Jim, I really don't know either way. I just, felt like having heard the hearing and the amount of sheer objections to it.
I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to light up some popcorn and watch that one.
Yeah.
Could I just jump in on that point? So with that is that technically there might not be an issue with getting it on the ballot, but there would be an issue in terms of education about making sure that people were going into that ballot educated about what exactly they were voting on. I mean, to use a similar example, this is not on the ballot for November, but how we vote in November has been a cause of concern for many people about educating people about ranked choice voting. And that was done over a year ago. And so if we were, talking about a 10-year plan, if we were talking about how we were, how this is needed to be some change in the city charter to get out information, you'd be looking at a very small window period of time to get that to people.
Well, yeah, that's true. But I mean, 90% of referenda are determined by the endorsements or non-endorsements, the opposition or support of elected officials. And most people follow that, or the media, New York Times endorses this, New York Post endorses this, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's a matter of people, they're not going to have to read through all of this legislation. They're going to read snippets from the New York Times ballot suggestions.
Right, and that's a whole other set of issues, right?
Right. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't read all of the, especially the New York State changes. I mean,
I think there was already a couple of articles, that came up after the hearing. Adam, go ahead. I think you had your hand up. Did you?
Sorry. So my question is for Kyle. So following up on the borough board, other boards have passed, I believe they've definitely heard presentations from Ally and the Speaker's office, but and I think some have potentially even passed resolutions of their own. Has this come up at all in the previous borough board meetings?
So this hasn't come up in any substantive way at Borough Board. I just know from casual conversations that this is something of interest.
Mm-hmm.
We are doing, collaborations between the community boards on a series of different issue areas that we're putting out. So the last one was on affordable housing, as many people might remember, the other month. And so this has come up in those conversations. We're planning about things that are important to us and how we're thinking about things, but it hasn't come up as a coordinated effort at the borough board, which is why this would be great if we could take the lead on this, put something together, and then corral the rest of the group and have something substantive to say, hey, this is something that you can just build upon or jump onto, rather than let's start from scratch and put something together.
When's your next borough board?
On the 18th. So 2 weeks from today.
It's not impossible.
But we'd have to get it in front of full board for the next.
Right.
Yeah. By the 11th.
By the 10th.
by the
By the
10th.
10th,
And
all right.
I mean, I think that's going to be a little hard, to be honest. I think we could try, but I think that's going to be.
Today's the 4th. You got 6 days.
Oh, thanks. Would you volunteer, Jim, to start it?
Huh? Well, I got a guy I'm running for something, so.
I like the timeline that Walls proposed.
I do too.
Yeah,
I think it
and
makes
so
more
I
sense.
would stick with that.
Yes, and then it would be the following borough board or.
Correct, in April.
Yes, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think we're going too fast in that case or too slow. I think hopefully we get
Embedding the
anybody else. And a lot of people,
right,
I think, and boards have given testimony, right? So there is written feedback from people. I don't know how many have done a resolution or anything like that. So we can certainly start and try to make it a kind of general one for.
Let me see what I can draft up for you by Monday.
Oh, are you volunteering to do this?
Well, I guess I am at this point because I don't trust Johnson. I think he's going to try to push it through. And, he's running for controller now.
Yes. Well, that's why I thought he'd have his plate full with that as well. Sandy?
Not when the contributors come in.
So are we in support or?
Yeah,
I mean, I think we actually have a way of saying we are against it unless you do this.
Right. I think we did. What was that? Maybe Cody can or Kyle or someone can remind us. There was a not in support of, but we did that for something else on land use, I think, recently.
Right.
On ULURP applications, there are more defined choices of like in favor with conditions, things like that.
Right.
When you're just writing a resolution,
you
could write it and you throw as many clauses at the wind as whatever you want.
Okay.
So are we in support?
Are we in support of a citywide plan, basically?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
is it the text?
Yeah, the way you can draft it is that you're in support of a city plan and then put in your stipulations about what you would want to see in that.
Right.
So whether that's a period of time or process or, et cetera, as the committee decides.
Does somebody want to send me, their
Jim, we have to
general
actually
objections?
vote.
No, I know. All right.
We're going to vote and we're going to listen to George.
Yeah, George is going to jump in now.
There was just, in terms of the, I just looked to see how many sponsors they have, because that's, if they had, 26 sponsors or something like that, it would be something that you'd really, I think, have to worry about. They only have 13 of this point, including Speaker Johnson.
Is there any Manhattan sponsors? Do you know?
Yes.
Yes, Keith.
Keith, Helen, Rosenthal, Carolina Rivera is a big supporter. Ben Kalos is a supporter, is a sponsor, though he doesn't seem to be as strong as some of the others in his support of it. So I think, that's, again, we don't know what the calendar is, but you would think that if it was going to go forward soon, they would have more sponsors or be accelerating in their accumulation of sponsors. I think they've added one since they've put this out. The other thing I just wanted to say is that I know I focus a lot on the land use elements of this. This is very wide ranging, in terms of coordination between city agencies and the capital planning and the 10-year capital strategies and all of this. And I just, in terms of my editorializing, there's a lot of good in here, right? There's a lot of good in terms of running the city better, right? So that, making the city more efficient and lots of good, rational strategies and management. And I only focus in on this little land use component of it, but it's a much bigger thing than that. And there's a lot to like. There's a lot to like in it. And again, that's my editorializing.
George, well, let's have the vote first, and then.
So are we voting on whether we're in support of, or are we voting on writing a resolution right now?
I don't think we know enough to know whether we're in
right.
support of
I think that people still have to do a bunch of research, right? So.
Well, let me ask you: do people generally support this kind of top-down changes of the city charter without any kind of a referendum? A considerable change of the charter. I mean, that's basically the issue. My view.
I mean, I would say that respect the point that you're raising enough that I want to know more about exactly what the legislation does. Like I'm concerned about it. I would say that.
Yeah, same. I have concerns about it. And again, as mentioned, I support the intent that was laid out. I just don't support the actual means that are laid out to get there. So I think we can continue to go through it, but I think we're in agreement about writing a reso and writing one that's somewhat general, not specific to our community board itself, but really just something about the legislation. Sandy, did you have another question or?
I don't actually have a question, but I personally don't think we need a referendum. I think we need a really considered bill that's been discussed thoroughly and vetted, but I don't think we need a referendum. And that's just my opinion. I think we could write a reso that brings up very accurate and concise points about this, but I don't think it has to go to for a full referendum. It's a very complex issue. And I understand that it would be hard to educate people with all the aspects of this and to get a really get good feedback for it. But that's, again, my opinion.
Okay, Kyle?
Yeah, I was just going to say in terms of process for tonight on the issue, I think you're all in agreement that you would like as a committee to put together a resolution, which I guess will be written by Jim and maybe Walls for next month. So I think you can kind of just leave it at that, because I'm not sure what exactly you would vote on tonight that you would then put in a resolution for next week. So what I think is a lot of these particular questions about referendum or not needing one, etc., can be discussed at that April meeting when the resolution is put together, because I'm assuming that potential resolution would include some language around this, and then at that point you can discuss more details about that.
Could I ask George and I guess Wells? I'm sorry, Kavitha. I guess you turned into the food fight at the hearing, and George, if you guys could give me specific things that you generally object to or support, I can draft up the language for the resolution.
We started doing from land use just to collect some thoughts around it, Jim. There was a Google Doc that we had started. So I'm just going to put some more information in there and share it.
That'd be great.
And I thought I saw, Letty, did you have, somebody else had their hand up, but it's down now. Okay.
Was that distributed to the whole land use committee? Or is it just people working on it? Because I don't recollect seeing it.
It was everybody.
All right.
It was an email.
An email that Adam sent out, right, Adam?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All you have to do is click on the Google link that Kavitha made.
All right.
And Adam, while you're there, I just wanted to ask, so if we start this, and I don't know, Wells, if you volunteered, I think you were volunteered by Kyle, but we can talk more about that. But Adam, did you want to do this as a joint reso with land use, or do you prefer we kind of draft something and just?
Yeah, absolutely. We can do this as a joint reso with land use. I think the overlap of both committees is like almost 100 at this point. And so if we need to dedicate time at the meeting to discuss this as well, happy to put it on the agenda. Actually, I think it might already be on the agenda. So okay, right.
And Kavitha, I'm happy to help, but I could not get a March 10th deadline. That timing's not going to work for me. I don't want to hold it back, but after, between now and our April meeting, I have time I could devote to this.
Yes, I agree to me, that's fine. I think we need to take a little time. I'm happy to help with it since I've kind of read through a lot of it. I'll put my thoughts down for you guys and we can take it from there. So. Any other thoughts on this, or we'll move forward with that and bring it up at the next land use meeting, and we'll shoot for full board in April to vote on it. And assume sorry?
The committee will vote at the next meeting?
Yeah, I think, does that make sense? Yes, because the next meeting is going to be before this, right? I don't think enough people have reviewed the documents to really have a vote.
Can somebody send me that document? I've got stuff here from Adam, but I don't see a link to it.
Yeah, there was so much stuff, Jim. I'll send it to you.
All right. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Send it to
Can you
after
send it to my business mail? It's easier.
this. We'll figure it out.
All right. I'll send you a note to get my business email. It's
Okay.
easier. All right.
Okay. So I think that's really the gist of it, unless we wanted to try to have any kind of forum or panel around it. I think at this point we have so much information that we have enough to work with. So not plan to have another event around it. We'll just try to get our thoughts in writing. Okay.
Very good.
And George, thank you so much for that. I don't know if you had anything else, any other words of wisdom for us moving forward, or if I
think it's great that you want to get involved in this, and I've been encouraging every community board to get involved in this. And I think going to borough board and trying to do something with others is a really great idea. This affects you guys a lot. It affects everybody a lot, but especially community boards, especially people who care about land use. So I just think it's, thank you for caring about it and getting involved. They need to hear from you.
Okay, great. We might be doing some more stuff around it, George. So stay tuned. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, so moving on, any other questions around that or thoughts? We're good to go. I think we can kind of move quickly through the remaining items then. I had on the agenda the coordinate multi-committee brainstorming session. I don't know how far we've gotten with that. To be honest, we've kind of talked offline. Wells and I have talked about that. I think Sandy was in a little bit of the discussions, but we're going to kind of continue moving along with that. Wells, let me know if you have anything to add, but really it's about kind of reaching out to each of the committees, getting in front of them to figure out priorities for district, for their needs, and on that topic, I think we'll just keep moving ahead and see if we can get a brainstorming session together before the summer, sometime in late spring. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but one thought was to have it and actually involve the newbies when they come on board, the new community board members, that it might be a really great exercise, that if we had this kind of collaborative brainstorming session and documents from that, it's something to kind of inform the folks that are going to be coming into the community board. Okay, so nothing to add on that. I just also wanted to say that I'll use this as my chair's report, but in terms of the 197A, the actual document from 2008, and I know Lou's not here. Did anyone else? Jim, were you involved in that? I just, I think you're muted, but nope, still muted. But anyway, still, I think it's something that's worth.
The 197?
Yeah.
The last one we did?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. What about it?
So I'm going through it. I went through it recently again, and I do think it's worth kind of revisiting that document and thinking about, do we come up with something, like we thought about coming up with a new community plan, and this whole comprehensive framework thing would basically negate 197A as I understand it. It wouldn't be like 197A wouldn't be like a thing anymore. That would be a new way of planning. Kind of in between, before we know what's happening with that, I think it would be good for us to kind of update what's on there, in terms of reviewing it, getting a new document, figuring out what's already been accomplished and what hasn't. I know we've been doing this piecemeal, but I really want to just dive into it at some point. And there was...
Well, the original, I mean, it was just for several blocks within the city, and it didn't really cover our entire community district.
So it'd be nice to use that as a jumping off point for something that does cover more.
The entire district.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's how all this started. I think when Claude raised the issue of all the development that was happening in the neighborhood, So, well, that's like a multi-year process, and it's also expensive.
So that's something that we were, thinking. I know we'd have to bring consultants on and stuff, but before we do any of that, really getting our hands around like what do we need to add to it, and that and I don't know if this is the case, that we may have that there may be a possibility to, bring somebody on just to kind of update some things in there, to identify what's in there and we want to work with.
Right.
So not the full like new community plan, but maybe a preliminary piece to that could be a good way to get ahead of things.
Yeah. Yeah, I've supported that from the outset, but I don't know if it was the land use committee or this committee that didn't want to proceed with it. But yeah, I believe in the 197As, and if they're part of this legislation, because I haven't really gone through all of the thing, I just looked at parts of it. Yeah, absolutely. If they're going to do away with 197s, then I'm a little bit more opposed to this than I was just on the basis of changing the charter without a referendum.
Yeah, I think basically as I read it, it talked about, as they laid out the comprehensive plan, it really was about the, as of now, the only real way that a community can engage in this planning process is a 197A. That's like one of the only tools available to us, right? And I don't know if this actually negates it fully, but it seems like it is going to somewhat replace the planning efforts, because
that was in the bill summary?
It was in the like booklet write-up. I don't know if it was in the actual legislation.
I was looking at the legislation. I didn't see that particular, but I didn't go all the way through it. It's fairly lengthy. All right.
Okay, so if we wanted to think about that or put any money towards that, if we have it in the budget, it's something that I'd like to, see if that's something we want to pursue with a consultant. Okay.
Well, George, we have George on retainer, so
right.
I don't know what the terms of that agreement are, but we would have to supplement that, or pay him separately for that, or I have no idea. I'm not privy to any of that.
Yeah, Sandy, you had something?
I just wanted to note that transportation just voted to hire a consultant without an RFP, without any kind of, searching for three different people to answer it. And it seems like that's a route that we could go. If transportation has that money available, it seems like we could certainly utilize the same kind of system. I actually voted against it because I think it's wrong, but there was no, I don't know what they based their decision on, but it does seem like it's something we could do.
What do they do on a traffic study, or?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, no, I don't. I mean, I don't know the scope of it. I know it's to widen sidewalks on 3rd Avenue for a portion of 3rd Avenue.
Okay.
The details we don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Letty, I see your hands up.
Yeah, I was just going to say that in terms of preparing and letting contracts, I would be very careful. And I would check to see what I agree with Sandy. I would check to see what transportation is doing, what the amount is, because even if it sails through our office, it could get stopped either at the borough president's office, or if they are not alert, it could get stopped at the controller's office. So I would check.
I can speak briefly to the logistics here. The proposal that the transportation committee voted on is under $20,000.
Okay.
So $20,000 is the threshold at which you would have to put something out to bid. And so that is why it can all happen just administratively without a comptroller review.
Okay.
So we potentially have $20,000 to hire whatever consultant.
999.
99, yeah, to hire whoever we want.
Right. Letty, did you have anything else?
I would almost rather do it in installments of like 15 and 5, or break it up or something. please just check the amounts because there are things going on that people without experience may not be aware of. So I would just double check.
Okay. Noted. Thank you.
That's all I'm saying, just double check.
We did that when we hired the consultant for this gig.
Okay.
We did 3 bids. We reviewed
Right.
everything. We put it out.
But it
Actually,
was
we did
all-
more than that.
But it was below $20,000. And that was to avoid the controller's review.
I would still stick with an RFP and competitive bids. It just keeps us on the up and up for whatever we're doing. For another commit, I agree, Sandy. And Sandy's probably got experience from the consultant. And excuse me, my throat's bad, but that's all I have to say. I'm cautious, and I agree with Sandy. Thank you.
I agree. I think I'd be cautious about it.
Agreed. And I don't know if we need to rush anything at this point. I don't know if we know enough of what we want yet to try to bring somebody on board for it. I think we need to determine that before we move forward.
But Cody, I understood there was a time restriction, that that's part of the reason why transportation is moving.
For that specific transaction, I mean, we're just operating on we know what our budget is for this fiscal year. We've got about a quarter of the fiscal year left, and we know roughly, because Jesus does a lot of kind of projections, right, how much we have left in our budget to spend for the rest of the fiscal year. And because we don't have a 4th staff person at the moment, there was this little bit of excess budget that Jesus wanted or suggested could be used by a committee for a purpose like this that may not be available to us the following fiscal year.
So we could arm wrestle.
At the end of June, sorry.
So we'd have to arm wrestle transportation for the money.
Well, wait.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much else is left. That's something that Kyle and Jesus could certainly discuss.
There's funds that we've raised ourselves from a street fair. I don't know how much is left. It had been a couple of years ago about 80 grand. I think it, and actually part of that was what funded the 197 that we put together a few years ago, or a number of years ago now. I mean, dating myself, but yeah, that was what paid for that. We didn't rely on city funds for any of that. So actually, we had full control over it. Didn't even have to go before the controller.
Jim, a lot of the money for the 197A came from Ezra, the East Side. Remember, it was the East Side Rezoning Alliance.
Right.
So they paid the bulk of it. We did not.
Well, we paid.
That's where the money came from, and it was not from checks from the community. It was Ezra that paid the bulk of that money.
I don't know about what the percentages were, but we paid a fairly substantial amount, as I recollect.
Jim, Letty's correct. It was Irene Perveri. They paid the bulk of the money for the 197.
Right, but I thought we kicked in.
Minor. It was
minor. The bulk of the money came from Irene.
Okay, so I mean, given that, I don't think if there's not enough money left that we're rushing to use up something for the, last quarter, and if there is some kind of street fair money, if there's something going on that, we can just kind of assess what our needs are and take it from there and then compare with what we actually have available. I think we should do this a little thoughtfully.
The street fair money has nothing to do with the fiscal year.
Right, I was going to say that there's no time limit on that, right?
Right, so we're not in a rush.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't think the city has any control over it either. I mean, the controller and what have you. I'm not certain, but I don't think it does.
I still think that we'd want to be appropriate about the process that we would hire. Like, I just think.
Oh, sure. But
right. But
yeah.
I think, yeah.
Yep, we did it. We went through it before, so we can do it again. Yeah. So, all right. I don't have anything else. We can, I think, move into old and new business. So if any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand. Oh, I did have one thing. I can jump in actually to my own question, but the one building, I was not able to find out any more information on that. I think it's just as of right that's going up that was the MSBI on that site. I can't remember the address. I'm sorry, on First Avenue. That one I was not able to get any more details on, but it looks like it's just going to proceed as far as I know. Any other old or new business? Sandy, go ahead.
Sorry to just keep bringing these things up. But just what George Jane said about the solo site, do we know if there are any deed restrictions on the solo site? Is that?
You know, Rich, were you doing some, I don't know if Rich, if you're still there.
I mean, I'm still here. I was, but all I found out was what was approved in the special permits. I don't know if there's anything binding if they don't go through or anything like that.
Well, this was
special permits. Okay.
This was from like 2015, right? 2014, whenever it was. And I have that paperwork.
Yeah, I think you shared that, right, with us, Rich? I know.
I sent you a link to one of them that linked to the others.
Okay.
But maybe that's something we could investigate.
We should look into it. I can.
You know who would know that? Ed Rubin, who was the former chair of the land use committee at the time that we handled the solo site. He would probably know that.
But it must be registered as well.
Yeah.
I can ask John West too, because he wanted me to get back to him as to the city club issue. So I'll ask him. You're just looking for deed restrictions?
Because apparently the special permits have expired, but the deed restrictions will not expire.
Oh, so the deed restrictions are in perpetuity, whether or not the permitted use is made.
That was my understanding. Claude, do you mind weighing in on this? Because
no, Letty just answered you correctly. The two people that would know the most is John West and Ed Rubin.
Okay, we'll ask them. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely worth following up on. And
yeah,
maybe you're interested to figure out what's going on there as well, the solo site. We'll see what we can get. Any other old or new business? No, it doesn't look like it. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 8:21 p.m. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.